Good afternoon everyone. I'm out here in the kitchen garden this week just to kind of get sowing some more vegetables and salads within our raised beds here at the hospice. I'm going to be sowing kind of your ones that salad crops that are going to germinate and give you a crop very quickly, but also some of the crops that actually will last well into sort of autumn time and give us some nice colour in these beds, but also things to eat later in the year. So I've already prepared the area, and all that means literally is just to give your soil a bit of a rake. Try and make sure you don't always plant the same crop in the same place. Give it a break and put a different kind of variety of vegetable or salad or whatever within the place it was. So what I'm going to be sowing here, where I am at this moment, I'm just going to sow a few rows of spring onions. We tend to kind of rotate our crops, as you can see. We've had some spring onions here that are almost finished with, so we need some more now, so I'll start them in this bed. If I happen to get another chance to have some more, I'll have them in another bed. Raised beds are very good because you're not having to bend so much. I can literally just sit on here. Put my seeds, I've got so many seeds, just sit on here and work from it, and it's very good for wheelchair users as well. Obviously, as I said, I've raked the soil, so the soil is actually all fine as it can be. I've also watered it. I watered it early this morning, so it's damp. It's not soaking wet, but it's just a little bit of moisture in there for the seeds to get going. I've been using one of our adapted tools, which actually is kind of a hoe, but it's a really nice handheld one. It's light, easy to use, and they are very good again if you've not got very good dexterity or things are a bit more difficult for you. They're Wolf garden tools, and you can get a mass array of these adapted kind of tools and long handled ones and so on to help you. So I'll just fine and sieve it all, break up some of these lumps so they're gone. Right, the important thing when it comes to sowing your seeds is just making your drill, as in your hole, your line. Try and grow them in straight lines. That way all that is just then you have the nice gap between each one to be able to hoe and weed a lot easier than if they were just all thrown in there. So as I said, we're going to sow some spring onions. Last packets, obviously. I've got here some spring onions, white Lisbon, so these are some lovely nice white ones, but I've also got here some North Holland blood red, so these are red spring onions and they are lovely. We've already been growing some of those and they've been using them here in our kitchen. So right, I've got my seeds. So to make your drill, your hole, you can use a plank as a kind of guideline. I mean, I just tend to do the line myself. This is where sometimes a cane comes in handy, because you can just do your line roughly where you're going to want it. Keep pushing it down and eventually you will get a deep enough hole. The kind of line you want and the hole, the depth of it is only maybe a centimetre or so, not much. You don't want to be sowing these far too deep, because then the seed is not going to get enough warmth, it's not going to get enough light, and you're highly likely they're not going to germinate. So you only want them just buried just slightly and covered with soil just slightly. Right, so that's my line, and as I say, just using a stick or even your hands, dependent what's easier. Again, if seeds are a bit difficult for you to hold, because I realise some seeds can be tiny and they're like dust, you can always just put them in a tub. Put them in a tub, then you can roughly see how many you've got. And as I say, just lightly sprinkle them along your line, just lightly sprinkle them. Obviously, once these germinate, you can thin them. We'll thin them out so that there's not too many clustered in one area, otherwise they'll all just be fighting for water, moisture, space. If you put them under that sort of stress, you then get the issue that they'll bolt. So we'll just lightly sprinkle all the way along. Oh, the amount of nature that is in this soil is amazing. There's spiders and all sorts here at the moment, and worms, which is good. That shows me that the soil is actually healthy. So once lightly sprinkled, we're just going to then just push the soil back over those seeds and they'll be fine. Make sure you label it. So let me get the right label. Put it where it begins. Then you know roughly in line with that is where your spring onions are going to come. Now I've got enough seeds here to do another row, so I will do another row of the white spring onions to use up these seeds. The kitchen seems to like them, and so does a lot of the staff here, so we'll sow some more. Again, just using my stick to make the drill, the line we want, just to put them in. And that's it. So again, just lightly sprinkling them. The difficulty sometimes with seeds is obviously the colour of them matches the soil, so sometimes you honestly don't know where they've landed, and you can get the odd one that does end up in the middle of the bed or where this line wasn't because you've dropped it or whatever. Don't worry. And as I say, once these have germinated, we will thin them out so that they are just kind of one a space, another one a space, another one, so that each individual one gets enough food, enough moisture, and it grows well. So we'll just cover them up. That's that one done. Right. Then the next row, as I say, was some red onions, spring onions. Again, same idea. Pretty much for any seed, it is the same kind of routine. Working out where you're going to put it, making sure there's gaps between the lines. You know, you do want a good kind of gap like this from one to another, so they get plenty of space to root underneath the ground, get their moisture, gaps so that there's air, less chance of pests then becoming a problem. Or in our case here, it's usually the birds that are more of a problem. Right, and we'll just get these ones out. So these are the red ones, as I said. Again, if you need to, put them in a little pot so you can kind of see how many you've got. It just helps. You can get seed dispensers nowadays, these click ones, the little tap ones, so that it does disperse just one seed at a time, but I find them quite fiddly. I find actually just sowing the seeds like this and seeing what happens the best way. And again, cover up the line back with the soil, label them so you know what's where. There it is, red spring onion. I tend to put the date on my labels as well, so I know when I put them in, just so I can keep an eye on them, that if in sort of 14 to 28 days they're not germinating, it may be that they're not going to, or something's happened, or a bird has had all the seeds, who knows. So I date them as well. I've got a lot of other things to sow, like at the moment now is a good time to sow your Swiss chard and beet leaf, which will give you some lovely coloured leaves throughout the sort of later in the year, and are just as good as eating spinach. Turnips, more beetroot, some more salad leaves, and some more spinach and radishes, and some of those are quite quick crops, so you will have them within sort of several weeks time. You'll have a crop. So I hope again this sort of inspires you and gives you some tips on sowing, but also, you know, giving you some tips on different tools you can be using should things be a little bit more difficult. Now it's all I need to do is just water, and that's important. Once you've done them, just give them a bit of water to settle them in. And that's it. Hopefully in a few weeks these will be germinating for us. Thank you again for watching, and I shall see you again next week.